Welcome to our June meeting of the PCAC. We need to move relatively quickly on our business because our speaker is scheduled for 12:30, and as he has a pressing engagement at 1:30, we need to make sure he goes on at 12:30. Plus, his presentation is going to be very interesting and very important to all three councils. So thank you all for coming. How about our minutes? Can we get approval of our minutes?
Make a motion.
Great. Great. How about today's agenda? Anybody have any problem with today's agenda? Can we get approval of that? Thank you. We have a new format now, which was we sent everybody, all three councils, minutes. This precludes us having to go through them at every meeting. However, if anyone has any questions pertaining to any of the transit riders, Long Island Railroad or Metro North Committee, this is the opportunity to raise a question. Oren.
Mike.
I just couldn't open those.
Yes, they were in Adobe format.
Yeah.
We'll send them in PDF next time.
Thank you very much.
You have seen them, though, because they're from the past two MNRCC meetings, but I know that you haven't necessarily seen the others. So we'll send them back around in an easier to open format.
Thank you.
Can we add on at the end, maybe since the meeting, last meeting, what may have happened? Because
Well, that's an opportunity yeah, absolutely.
Because I was like a month ago, was our last
Right.
meeting. Some maybe early, closer to the PCAC meeting than other
Yeah.
councils.
So that's what, there's an opportunity.
As Mark just mentioned, his council has things they would like to add into the minutes. And do you want to do that now, or?
Just since our last meeting, which was a month ago, what was important to us and many other people is that we did get first a briefing on the changes coming to Penn Station, the drastic changes coming to Penn Station very shortly. Followed by afterwards, we attended the governor's public announcement about what changes are being made to Penn Station. That was just since our meeting had happened afterwards. I looked up into the minutes that we did have both a briefing and then we went to the open to the press conference by the governor.
No. Chris, did you have something that you wanted to say? Well, it would be good if you swallowed first.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As I was saying on the minutes, as I read the minutes and all the chairperson's reports, I don't have Adobe, but I got it out of the PDF, and I'm actually looking at it as we speak. So I don't know if it could be something, an update it needs to be, just maybe a computer functional problem that needs to be checked, because I'm looking at it right now from PCAC, TRC, Metro North. To me, I actually can read it really well from my laptop. No, I can understand with self. That was weird. The mic just went out on me. Oh.
You gotta move your hand. It's infrared.
Oh, it's infrared. Thank you. As I was saying again, is the minute with the reading the minutes, I have to say the minutes were really, really good because at least I can read it and at least I can see it. Because in the past, there was sometimes I did mention years ago before you, Lisa, it was small and was lucky I see it a little more enlargement. It was really good to see it. Thank you.
We'll work on those technical difficulties and get the minutes back out. Thanks.
Great. Anyone have any comments on or anything you'd like to say about either of the committee reports if you were able to open them? Go ahead, Chris.
On the Long Island Railroad, Mark, I wanted to mention something. I want to thank you on a lot of things on Long Island Railroad. A lot of the people in the disability with deals with OPWDD want me to tell you they love your voice at the train stations because you're the only one that actually speaks clearly. Even I heard you and I was like, where is he? You scared me a little bit, but it was nice to see that something is going on and you're mentioning to people to be safe, and I really do enjoy it. And I also wanted to also add, if you did hear, that Long Island Rail student doing that test at Glen Head with that new accessible thing, it works pretty good, just needs to be a little more adjustments, needs to be, but it should be working good. But I hope in the, yeah. I thought we did send it to you. I did, I'll resend it to you in a few minutes, the pictures. But it works pretty good at Glen Head, but I hope in the future, like I did mention to Vanessa on the ADA task force, to try to do some more in the Queens, like Woodside, and a little bit because where the real heaviness is, because you don't have ambassadors at those stations, those areas needs to be really checked from there. If they're going to LaGuardia Airport, JFK is covered because you have them there, but not LaGuardia.
And several people have asked why Glen Head was selected. Do we have an answer to that yet?
I'm still waiting for that answer, but to me, Glen Head was also refixed, their ramp was refixed, and their poles were refixed, and the station edges were fixed when I was there.
Carol's asked several times.
Mm-hmm.
The jury's still out on that one. Okay, since there's nobody talking about any committee reports, there have been several leadership changes at MTA since our last meeting. I'm sure you've read about some of them, but yesterday we learned that DOT Commissioner Trottenberg has tendered her resignation as a board member of the MTA, which will be effective the day her replacement is confirmed in Albany. Politico has also reported that Mayor de Blasio has nominated former Office of Labor Relations Commissioner Bob Lynn to succeed Commissioner Trottenberg, and Dan Zarilli, the mayor's chief climate policy advisor, will fill the seat left by the vacancy when Carl Weisbrod departed in April. So a lot of changes going on. You of course know that Pat Foy is our new chairman, and 4 new nominees were announced. Kevin Law replaced longtime member Mitch Pally.
Who will miss?
Yeah, we will really miss him. Rhonda Herman, formerly of Randy's Metro-North Commuter Council, replaced Andrew Saul from Westchester County. Michael Linton took Chuck Merdler's seat, and Haida Mehotzis replaced Peter Ward. Haida's feeling good today. The Mets really kicked it last night, so she's with the Mets. These new board members all move through the approval process quickly, yet our approvals and getting new council members and those sort of things are not moving as quickly. Big surprise there.
And our staff?
Yes.
And our staff is regularly following up on this. I have to give them a lot of credit. They really are making regular phone calls to find out.
Yes, yes. That we are definitely doing. There has been some talk about attendance at these quarterly PCAC meetings and how the location and times may not work well for everybody. If it's everybody's concurrence, we should probably discuss what possible options there are. Obviously, coming downtown doesn't work for everybody, and middle of the day doesn't necessarily work for everybody. What would be some suggestions that some council members would make? Obviously, if you couldn't make this meeting, you're not here to make that suggestion, but perhaps one of your fellow council members is. I think we did a poll months and months ago, and it appeared that the majority of folks thought that this was the best time and place, but we are open to experimentation if that will mean more representation from our member council. So, ready to listen to any suggestions.
I just want to bring forward, this is again, I guess, coming a lot from our council, as it did last time, because members work in the city and they just really can't leave at 12 o'clock in the afternoon to come to a meeting as much as they'd like to come. I don't know if it's the location as much for them as it is the time for our members. I understand that that's just, they constantly apologize for not coming to the meetings, but they say, I can't leave work where they live. They may work midtown and then leave and come for, it's more than that. It's a 2-hour meeting, but plus coming and going to get here. You know, you can talking about maybe 3 hours in the middle of the afternoon. They can't, the employer's not going to let them do it. So we brought it up once before. I would just bring it up again, and we obviously can't do it just among who's here. But I
Obviously.
think that that there's something to be prepared to options. But I don't.
What are
think
the
for us,
times
I don't
that you
it's-
think those folks might be
you
more
know,
amenable to?
Unfortunately, our meetings are at 4:30, just because they
Are
can
they
get out.
2-hour
because
meetings, though?
Depends if we have a speaker, don't have a speaker, depends who comes. But we have ours.
Jerry, you don't have a mic, and you should.
You want mine?
No, there's more mics out there. We'll just get them.
So I just want to know where it came from. It came from our council members who feel bad that they're not here in the meetings, so.
Thank you.
That's it.
So you're saying that you think 4:30?
I didn't say 4:30, just that's when ours are. I know that getting later is harder. I mean, the later.
I'm thinking people want to get
later-
home for dinner or something, and it's
Well-
4:30 to 6:30, and you're downtown, then you're going to first go to Penn Station or
Well,
Atlantic Terminal? or-
again, how many meetings do we have a year from PCAC? So if we can maybe even alternate, once one time, I don't know, just to get more people to come. So when we have a speaker, we want them a full room, right?
This,
Can I-
take this the wrong way, because it's not meant in any wrong. This just went off by its, but are you finding all of your folks are able to attend your meetings at that time of day, or some of those even have problems with that time?
Well, they have problems, it's not the time. It's just,
Oh, okay.
It's a question of whether some people aren't always in the city,
Right,
on
right.
those days, but it isn't the
Okay,
time.
well, that's a thought.
We had a similar conversation at the Metro North Railroad Commuter Council for both the council meetings and the committee meetings. And there was some indication that people would be available later in the day and in different locations. But what we, I think, discussed was sending out a survey to all of the members to get a sense of, I mean, again, it could be mixed up. It doesn't always have to be in one place or at one time, but just to ensure that there is participation. So we can send a survey and ask for people to respond to it. And then plan accordingly, and if people are not attending, then we want to make, the goal is to increase participation and attendance to as many people as possible. So, but we need people to respond. So we'll send that out after this meeting. We wanted to have the conversation first.
Oh, that's great. Mark didn't mention it, but over Memorial Day weekend, there was a terrible derailment on the east end of Long Island. There's been a lot of bad blood between labor and management lately, but everybody came together and repaired that.
Even Metro North was out.
And even New York City Transit was out there with
Were they?
buses. Yes,
Oh, but
supplying some of the
Metro North-
buses between
Metro North, the crews came
Patchogue and
out there.
Hampton Bays, but, yeah, Metro North crew, I mean, and it was back by Memorial Day, so that's really good news. As you know, they're doing a pilot of the Omni card currently. No weeklies or monthlies or other types of discounts are currently able to be utilized on it, but it is a lot faster than the swipe. You don't have to pay people to keep the the slots clean. You don't have to worry about the stripe on your card wearing out. So they can't move fast enough to the full-fledged Omni card, as far as I'm concerned. Especially on buses where it takes 4 seconds for the thing to digest your card and spit it back up at you. Tapping is so much faster. Plus, it also gives an indication of when the last fare you paid was taken, which will be helpful in terms of fare evasion. And of course, the Long Island and Metro North are going to get it as well. And having one fare media for all of the 3 divisions, and possibly PATH and maybe New Jersey Transit at some point, makes a hell of a lot of
He
sense.
gave a very nice presentation.
Yeah, he did. Mark?
Just for the record, again, the problem that we have with the system that we've asked and can't get answers to is right now on Long Island Railroad, if you have a monthly ticket, you also get a Metro card as a joint, and the systems that they're implementing don't take that into account. So you may lose your discount if you did 2 separate. Well, we've asked them, we've asked them and they've said that they can't guarantee. So I want for the record that I think hopefully this whole PCAC will join us and making sure
yeah,
that
Metro North as
whatever
well.
system is in it will take the mail and ride, tickets.
Just with this, if you're moving to a new fare option, which is advertised to be usable on Long Island Railroad, Metro North, and New York City Transit, and it doesn't have the discount that you just mentioned, it's a non-starter.
That, just so their answer when we asked them was, at this point,
Well-
it won't take it, is what they said so far. So, and they said, but the future, we don't know. So I just want to put on the record for whole PCAC, it's an issue that we're facing, and we really don't want to come after the fact and say, why didn't it work?
We need to be talking to them right now about that. Randy?
Should we make a resolution asking for this, to formalize it? Do we have a, we have 11. How many, will we now, 24?
We can write a letter, certainly. No, we need a, if that's a sentiment, we can certainly reach out to express that.
The sentiments are, we're all looking forward to a quicker, easier, more accessible, and more easily refilled fare option. But if it doesn't maintain all of the current discounts, fare options, transferability that the current system, with all its imperfections, has, we don't see this as a good option moving forward. Does that say what? Yeah. Yeah. Anybody object to that?
Works for me.
We will send that out. Lisa, did you want to do something? Lisa, you want to do your executive director?
Sure, we do. So we've, I'm not going to read our report because it's now 9 pages long, which makes me very happy. We've been really busy. We're participating in the Queens bus redesign meetings and also in the Bronx meetings that follow up from the bus redesign that happened last year. So we're continuing to look at those, and with the Queens redesign, we're sort of getting in on the real ground floor to look at a number of the key issues moving forward so that we can help shape that. Christopher's been going to meetings as well, too. So we'll be coming back to you. TRC at the last meeting had somebody from the bus redesign meetings come and talk to us about their efforts and the next steps there. We've been working with the councils on some media activities, but also on advancing the work that they're doing, working with elected officials to provide any kind of background starting in Long Island Railroad Commuter Council, but really as looking at it as a broader base, working on an update to the Minutes Matter, which we're looking at sort of as a performance matters kind of update that incorporates a number of different features. One is it looks at the on-time performance metrics that were included as part of the budget legislation, and also recommends easier to use rider-centric dashboards for visualizing what the metrics are, what's happening, and how things are being measured and how to understand what they are. So we're advocating for those also at the board level to include those in the board books, and met with Kathy Rinaldi, and she was interested in that. And then we're going to speak with Mark in the council in Long Island to move forward with being in touch with Phil Lang on pulling that together as well. We've been testifying at different committee meetings, at board meetings on an ongoing basis. We wrote a letter last week regarding the emergency debarment rules that were signed and implemented retroactive to April 12th, but that have not been publicly announced or, as far as we know, or been even shared with the contracting community. So we've been we're hopeful that there will be a change in those rules. Yes, I think I'm going to wrap up because our featured speaker is here. We've been continuing to keep up with the L train slowdown and looking at the data there and meetings and continuing our sentimental analysis. And we will have more to report. However, we have our featured speaker who we will present. Andrew, you have his bio? I don't. Thought I gave it to you. No, because I pulled it out right here. Pardon me. Thank you.
So we're fortunate today to have Patrick Warren with us, who is the MTA's Chief Safety Officer. Prior to joining the MTA, Mr. Warren worked for the Federal Railroad Administration as Deputy Associate Administrator for the Office of Railroad Safety, and then as the agency's Executive Director. While there, he was responsible for a range of issues, including implementation of Positive Train Control Safety System, which is very much on topic, strategies for reduction of accidents involving crude oil and ethanol trains, and the development of new advanced standards for passenger rail cars. He further served with the Federal Aviation Administration as Deputy Director of Planning and Programming. In these roles, he provided leadership over the administration's national operations to support rail and airport development as well as rail safety. Before joining the U.S. Department of Transportation, Mr. Well, I don't have to go into that stuff, and his college stuff, we are fortunate. I've attended many meetings with Pat, and I think we're moving in a good direction at MTA. We're looking at everything from positive train control to a CBTC, to grade crossing safety, to safety on the tracks, to signaling, to speed limits. I mean, everything that you can imagine Patrick Warren has on his plate now. It's a huge administrative job, and we're fortunate that he's our leader at the moment. So, Patrick, glad to have you here. Thank you.
All right. Just get this a little closer. Thank you so much for having me here. It's my first time to talk to this group, and so it's a pleasure to meet you all and see you all. And I hope to do it again in the future. And feel free to contact me anytime or talk to me about any issue. I'm glad to let you know what's going on. We'd like to be as transparent as possible, and this topic is such an important one as we go forward. So. I'd like to sort of start off, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but I sort of like to say this about what we're, the universe of the challenge we're dealing with. And the universe we're dealing with is that, we serve, as you all well know, about a greater metropolitan area of about 15 million people. So we're trying to provide safety in that environment, which is over 5,000 square miles of it. We actually operate our system within it. So that's a lot. And 70,000 workers are spread throughout that 5,000 square mile system, and we're trying to communicate with them and make sure that they're safe across that entire system. And of course, we operate in and through 3 different states, and they got their own rules. They have their own rules for safety and safety regulations and requirements, which is a challenge out there. We provide, 2.73 billion trips a year, which is just a stunning number. And if you compare it in magnitude to any other place in the United States, it's not comparable. There's nobody even close. And of course, the 3 million trips a day that we do. And here's some statistics I think that are worth sort of throwing out there. One is that 2/3 of the national rail rides, so anybody who's riding a train, happen right here in this system. And 1 out of every 4 transit rides, so you can throw the buses in there, happen right here on this system. So the magnitude of the challenge here is significant as we talk about safety and emergency management. And I want to also throw out that, and it's just not pablum, it's just not trite words that we throw out there. Safety really, really is important to the chairman, it's important to the managing director, it's important to all the presidents out there. I can't, I sit in a host of topics, as Commissioner Albert pointed out, and every time within a few sentences of it always becomes, well, what's the impact on safety? So it's really a heartfelt issue that we take a lot of care in talking about. So let me just talk about a moment the functions of my office. And one is, I said, is safety, and we talked about. Well, I'm going to talk about the other half real briefly, and that's emergency management. Emergency management ties in very prominently into the safety business. It's the part that makes sure that we are resilient, that that we are prepared for an incident to occur. If an incident does occur, we can handle it rapidly and recover quickly. And all of that has the importance of trying to save costs in terms of money, costs in terms of limiting the amount of damage that happens out there, and costs certainly in terms of injury and loss of life as it goes to the system. So let me just say a couple of the activities that we're going on, that we're working with regard to hardening our infrastructure. Sort of three phases to it, before, during, and after kind of events as we look at emergency management. So what are we doing for hardening our infrastructure? And I brought a few slides here. A lot of this has to do with after Superstorm Sandy, a lot of lessons from that. But there has been a lot, and I think you should just go away feeling pretty good about what's been going on in terms of trying to harden our facilities in terms of weather-related stuff. So there we go. Okay, so these pictures aren't the biggest, and you can certainly give you these later on, but if you look on the slide, what you're seeing here is that on the left, just for example, and I won't go through every single one of them, but that's the subway entrance, and we've come up with some kind of systems to sort of seal it off in order to, if there's a storm or heavy rains or a flood, to keep water from pouring down the subway systems. The second type is a different common barrier, but the same idea. There's a bunch of these metal logs that we put up to go over the system. You can see some kinds of bladders and other systems that we'll put into the air vents that I'm prepared to put into the air vents that for the subway system. You can see some sort of a submarine-looking lock door that will seal off tunnels in there. And every one of our tunnels, whether it be a road tunnel or one of the tunnels that goes, any one of them that goes under the water, has these significant doors. And that's a small door, but there's also huge doors that we have down there. Seawalls also that we have reinforced or built out there. Let me see if okay. Some of the other stuff we've done is what's significant about, for instance, the top center picture is that we've just elevated some structures out there so that we can get some of the equipment off out of sort of the floodplain, so to speak, as we look at the equipment out there. Also hardening and some of our switches and other track systems in order to make them more less susceptible to weather issues. A couple interesting things here. One is this special kind of manhole insert that will help prevent water from going down in the systems. Some ballast that goes out on the that we've reinforced along some of the seawalls out there. Been quite a bit of work on the bottom left in improving the air vents that go into some of our tunnels in order to make them less susceptible to water coming down into them and then flooding the tunnels. So quite a bit of work there. A couple more systems out there that you can take a look at that we've put in place over the last several years to make us more resilient in case of a large storm. So a ton of work, a lot of it done with federal money from Superstorm Sandy, and quite robust, quite frankly. So that's some of the activities we've done for hardening the systems out there. Another area that we work on is training, and training meaning that the leadership and the staff out there are ready to handle a situation that may occur. Just this week, we had a coastal storm or hurricane training event for all the leadership, all the presidents, Pat Foy, et cetera, just on this floor to go over what we're going to do for a coastal storm. Likewise, we do it for man-made events, stuff like active shooters and the like, and we had something similar to that here earlier this winter more on the security side, but it's a similar kind of issue. And we periodically do these at the headquarters level. It's all the same work goes on at all of the agencies at their level in order to make sure that they're ready for a storm and be able to mitigate the results or what might happen there and then quickly recover from it. So quite a bit of training going on. And the last thing I'll talk about with regard to emergency management is a mass notification system that we're currently employing. We just brought on the Everbridge company to install a mass notification system. Now, we had several individual mass notification systems at the different agencies, but now we have a consolidated one. And the good news there is that it's a much more robust system, but by consolidating it, we actually get a less expensive system. So it's a win-win all around. And the system is important for a couple other reasons. One is that it's also the system that the state is now using and the city's now using, so we're now compatible with those agencies. And it's also much more robust than we had in the past. So not only can it handle mass notifications in terms of a crisis, like a storm or something, but it also helps us in much more routine incidents. For example, and maybe some not so routine. For instance, let's just say there was some kind of disturbance out front of this building. It's sophisticated enough to know who's in the building by who swiped in, et cetera, to just put a notification out to the folks in the building that there's a disturbance out front, please use the back door or something to that effect, to more mundane stuff about, what switch or what track is out somewhere. And instead of sending that information to everybody like myself, it would just make sure it went to the right maintainers and those that needed to know that. So it's a very robust communication system that we're putting in here that is really bringing us up into the 21st century. So that's a little bit about emergency management. There's a lot to talk about with it, and glad to talk about it any more with anybody else. But what I'll do now is I'll switch to talk a little bit about safety. So safety, and I'm going to talk about I'll pick three topics. As was just pointed out, that we could talk about almost anything, and safety is involved in almost everything out there. But I'm going to talk about three challenges that we're really focusing on right now. One is trespassing. Trespassing is an intractable problem. It manifests itself in many ways. It could be someone just walking the track because they think it's fun. It could be somebody wanting to commit suicide. It can be somebody homeless trying to find a place to make an encampment in the tunnels. It could be somebody going into the tunnels to steal copper or some other product that they feel is down there. It could be just a lark by kids who think it's funny. There's so many reasons to go into the track, and it has and we consider another category trespassing, and that's doing things that are inappropriate, like surfing on the back of a train or walking in between cars, which present a huge safety hazard for those people. And it certainly is very disruptive to the network, and it's very costly to the network. And many of us have been on a train or a subway or a bus where there's been an incident, and it really costs us in terms of a disrupted service. It costs us in terms of the trauma that our workforce may experience if they are confronted by hitting perhaps somebody on the tracks, and then it talks about what the cost of the customer. The customer didn't make it where they were going, and there's costs that we can't even begin to count there. And I don't have real numbers on this, but I've heard it anecdotally in several national kinds of forums that each one of these kinds of incidents, particularly one in which there's someone who dies due to a suicide or some other kind of trespassing event, the actual long-term impacts are in the millions. When you think about the police effort that went into the investigation, the cleanup of it, the problems to the family, the loss of revenue, et cetera, it really becomes quite significant. So trespassing is a challenge that we're looking at. So and really the reason it's an intractable problem is because we're trying to influence the behavior of people who don't work for us. And that's sort of a twist on normally what we're trying to do, right? So we're trying to get people to not do things on our properties that would put them in harm's way. So what are we doing? So there's some technical things we're working on. We have looked at, and we are installing cameras. Now, cameras can do a couple of things. That one, they're sort of forensic. They let us know that after the fact what happened. So in some cases, we have enough visibility or wherewithal to note that they're going into, and these cameras are focused on platforms and in tunnels and sometimes along the runway, that somebody's going into the tunnels or somewhere they shouldn't be. And in some cases, we're looking at cameras that can actually trigger on someone going into an area where there's movement now and there shouldn't be movement. Another technology that we're experimenting with right now is a kind of radar technology. There's a couple types of them out there, but they basically look either at the track in front of the platform or down the tunnels, and again look for movement and other things and that are inappropriate or weren't scheduled to be there, and then we can alert on them and try to look for trespassers or whatever it might be. So that kind of technology. Barriers. We look at putting barriers out there. Some of them are, you have to be practical about the barriers you're putting out there, and of course, cost does matter. I mean, you wouldn't put a a 12-foot wall all along from here to Poughkeepsie along the Metro North track to try to keep people off the tracks. So, it's in track, you can't do that, or it's not cost effective rather. We look putting barriers where it's feasible, appropriate, and useful, and then in cases where, for instance, out on the two railroads where there should be an underpass or maybe perhaps a pedestrian bridge or something to that effect, to try to mitigate the risks of trespassing, those efforts are looked at. So barriers are a third thing we do. Other kinds of, I don't know if it's a technology, is putting call boxes on our platforms and other locations that largely they're for those that may have seen someone fall in, they may have seen, they may be noticed someone is not acting correctly, and that they may believe that they're about to do harm to themselves. So that we have call boxes out there in many locations to try to help also mitigate the issue of trespassing in that regard. So those are some technologies we're using out there, and I do have another picture here, I guess. So this is a picture of one of our bridges, our entrance on bridges, and you can see that there's a call box there. There's some signs. In this case, it's talking about suicide prevention, and then going along the idea of signage or public service announcements. We've put a lot of effort into putting out in different locations signs that either talk about such, if you need help, here's a number to call for suicide prevention kind of support. Call box in case somebody fell on the side, fell in, and we can immediately try to notify somebody. And other systems on our apps that you can immediately notify somebody and say there's a problem out there. So a lot of try to public service stuff to talk to our customers and others about what they might do to help in this challenge. And the last thing that we're doing with trespassing is principal thing we're doing is training. We try to train our own workforce, whether they're train out crews or they're station crews, or anyone who deals with the public, about what to look for in terms of what kinds of behaviors might indicate that somebody is going to trespass, whether it's somebody who's mentally ill or considering suicide, or homeless, or any other behavior that we're concerned about. So we have training that goes for those frontline employees and their managers to try to go after that problem. As a matter of fact, to that end, we just recently started a mental first aid. Of course, we just actually started with the city, and we've brought it over to MTA, which helps teach our staff how to identify folks that are having some kind of mental stress. Could be our own employees, it could be customers, and I try to help identify and then give some mitigation or some techniques in how they might intervene and save someone's life, or put them in a better place. So that's trespassing. The second safety area I'll talk about is fatigue. And fatigue is another real challenging problem that comes in. It is caused by many issues. So some issues include just their working long hours, and how do you work through that challenge? Others that they just don't sleep well. Maybe sleep apnea or some other challenge. It could be a health issue. It could be that they're just sick, they're taking NyQuil or whatever, and it causes them to be fatigued, or it could be substance abuse. So there's multiple reasons why fatigue presents itself. So what are we doing about fatigue? So here are some of the solutions we're working on. One of them is I mentioned sleep apnea. And to MTA's credit, it instituted a robust program for the testing and then further monitoring of sleep apnea. And the good news about sleep apnea is it's a program where if someone is diagnosed, it's treatable. So it's not a problem. So once they're treated, then they can go right back to work, and the treatment is very rapid. So That's good news, but quite frankly, the program we have, and I know this just from where I worked at the federal at the U.S. Department of Transportation, is we have the best-in-class program for sleep apnea out there. So we should all, I think, feel pretty good about that. I know that I do. Second area and it's going back to the area of positive train control. And you don't think, well, what's positive train control have to do with fatigue? Well, it really goes after the consequences of fatigue. And many of you probably are aware that if you are fatigued at a certain point, you are the equivalent of being intoxicated. Your mental faculties and your motor control are so often worse than some of the early stages of being intoxicated. So it is a real significant problem. So PTC is a system that has four principles that it must achieve. One of them is to not let the train speed, and we know in the past in MTA that we've had the challenge of a train going over speed and killing people, and that and fatigue is part of that was part of that problem. It keeps trains from running into each other. It keeps trains from going on the wrong track through a switch, and it also keeps trains from going into a work area where workers are. So all of those happenstances could have happened because of a fatigue issue. And with positive train control, that will be a lot of those consequences will be largely mitigated. And many of you have heard about and talked about PTC, and you know that we're working diligently towards the implementation of it. It's currently in operation and testing on several locations on both Long Island Railroad and Metro North Railroad, as well. And we're on track to finish up by the federally mandated timeline of December of 2020. On the subway side, CBTC is the system that is of equivalence in many regards to PTC. And it is being currently on a couple of lines, and it is programmed to be on many other lines in our subway system. But again, all these systems are very costly, so we have to manage balance costs with our expectations here. So that's positive train control. Hours of service is another area of fatigue where it is there are hours of service meaning how long you can work before you get rest. Are mandated by the Federal Railroad Administration and for commercial driver's licenses, those who use commercial driver's licenses, like on our buses. So there are some rules already for those, but there are many other jobs that are safety sensitive, are operating with heavy equipment in dangerous environment that we really believe could stand to have hours of service regulations or safety considerations about them. So we're in the middle of pursuing them right now. Maintenance of way is one area that these are the track workers that we're particularly interested in. So that's one of the major pushes that we have ongoing right now. And the last thing I'll talk about with fatigue is a drug and alcohol program. It's robust. It is also federally mandated, but it's probably worth knowing that of all the systems out there, and we talked about how large this one is, we have, again, best-in-class results. We have really, really, really low positive rates, meaning that very few of our people come up positive for using a substance. So that is really comforting in many regards that's the case, especially given the opioid crisis that's facing the nation right now. So I think we feel good about that, but we don't rest on that. It's something that we, as a society, we have to stay after. And certainly the drug and alcohol program is one of those areas that can keep us straight in that regard. The last area that I'll spend a minute and talk about with regard to safety is just our aging infrastructure, and it's significant. And you all know the stories. We have challenges with aging tunnels. We have challenges with our track, our signal systems, our stations, et cetera. As we talked about right at the beginning, it's a 100-year-old system. And it's a system, by the way, that was of kludge together of many systems. And anybody who's in the business of supply operations, you know that, when you have multiple sizes of tunnels and multiple sizes of trains that can fit in those tunnels and multiple different track systems with different parts, and you have to have different mechanics with different skills, et cetera, it becomes a nightmare to try to keep them in play. So, and working safe. And that's the challenge that we're up against given how MTA came about over the last 100 years. That said, there are fairly robust capital programs that are ongoing out there. They all take time. We're we're refurbishing stations, we're refurbishing track, we're adding new track out there. And so I think that we should all feel pretty good that we're working towards those goals. But again, it's slow progress in many regards. Same with escalators and elevators, very challenging area. And although they are a lot younger than the system itself, many of them are old in terms of that kind of product. And we have a lot of maintenance work that we have to in order to keep them operating safely. So what are we doing? What else are we doing about it besides capital work? Is we really have put a Herculean effort into inspections. Not only do we have a robust routine maintenance / inspection program, some of it's mandated federally, others is not. Many of you probably know that the transit system by and large does not have regulations against it, but that are very specific to the system itself. But the railroad system does. They have very robust regulations. So our transit system is able to leverage the best practices from the railroad system, and we apply that to the transit system. So that's really good news for us, and that we have that example to work from every day, and that experience we can draw on. And so we do all those federally mandated inspections, and then we mimic them within the transit system. Likewise, anytime we find some new challenge out there, and probably several of you recall the recent debris that's fallen from the elevated track on the L line. When nobody's anticipating 7 line. Sorry, 7 line. Thank you very much. Boy, you guys are sharp. You're all on it. When something like that happens, I don't know how aware you are, but we rolled out a significant inspection team to go out and look at all of our elevated track and take a look at first the easy stuff and then the hard stuff. It doesn't mean that something won't fall off of a track for any of 1,000 different reasons, but huge efforts have gone in place to do those inspections and then come up with strategies to continue that. So whether it's something new like that, relatively new that we didn't expect, or the programs that are already well established, the inspection system is quite robust and ongoing, and the folks out there are very sincere about it. So I'm going to stop there, and if you have questions or other areas of safety that you're interested in, I'm sure glad to talk to you about it.
Edith?
Yeah. I have a question about the efforts that have put in place to raise platforms at boarding areas, and the fact that the trains don't stop at those boarding areas. So that, for example, I'm in Washington Heights, and 175 is my station. And I would say at least 1 out of 3 times when I'm coming back uptown, it's completely off the hump. So you went out, you raised the platform edges, and they still don't stop in the right place.
Edith.
There's only one place to stop.
No, there isn't.
Is this true for all 3 car types that are running on the A line?
Pretty much. We actually have done a thing about sitting at the far end of the platform to see where exactly the train stops, and they stop at various. It may only be 5 feet.
Yeah.
It may be 2 feet. but all of this gets you off the hump. You can stand there at 42nd Street and watch the train come in and not land on the hump. If I'm on the hump at 175, why am I not on the hump at 42nd Street?
Yeah, there's three or more car types running on the A line now, too.
Yeah.
So I don't have a real good answer for you, but I'm taking the note, and a couple things come to mind. One could be that we need to either add maybe or adjust them such that they fit all car types. That's one. Two is that, God bless all of our train operators, but sometimes they may miss their mark when they're pulling into the station. So we need to reinforce, their I don't know quite how to say this delicately, but their ability to hit the mark. That's all. So I'll take that note and I'll pass it on.
Yeah, I have a particular safety concern. Over the last year or so, we've had a few incidents where Long Island Railroad trains would open doors where there was no platforms. We've been very fortunate in that no one has gone out those doors, but if it continues, sooner or later, someone's going to go out one of those doors and be seriously injured or maybe killed. And, I just want to know what the MTA at Long Island Railroad is doing to address that issue. We had an incident just last Friday night,
As recently as Friday.
as recently as Friday,
Okay.
yep.
So I think you probably know that they have protocols to not have that happen, right? But clearly they're at times not being, conducted properly. So I will again take the note back to them and find out if there's a, what I hate to, one of these, sometimes people think we need a rule for a rule, they're not, if we already have a protocol for not opening the doors where there's no platform, and then they don't follow the protocol, then then we need another rule about the protocol. Well, that's not really particularly helpful. That they may not follow that second rule. What we need to do is get them to enforce the protocol that they have in place. So let me get with them, and I'll get back with the team here and give you some feedback on that.
And this is a personal opinion, not for the council, but there needs to be penalties when something like this happens, if you endanger the lives of your customers. We've had, in previous incidents, they're very reluctant to tell you anything, but on one occasion when this happened, I was told, well, we called the crew in and we spoke to them, and they're going to get retraining. I think more, give them 2 weeks off without pay. And again, this is just my personal opinion, and I know you have union concerns and hearings and all that other stuff, but there needs to be some sort of severe penalty, not just a slap on the wrist, to get their attention so they'll be more cognizant of this stuff. And again, just an opinion.
I just want to follow up with Jerry on the same point. Jerry, the second part you forgot, that sometimes is it happening and they're not reporting it. We have reported it by pictures. So you have a double. You've got a violation, a serious violation, and then the crew, hate to,
So
but
whenever,
not reporting it.
whenever you're reporting the train run,
There isn't, there's not accountability here at all, because what everybody's been saying for some time now, our council can report it, but the self-reporting is pretty unlikely, unusual. So some mechanism that informs, so you know how bad the problem is, because it happens to be when, one of our members is on board, but being able to identify how bad the problem is.
There is a program out, there's a program out there, the close call reporting, confidential close call reporting system, that they could use. Doesn't mean they are using it, but they could use, that would let them report it without committing themselves to some kind of punishment. But it brings awareness to the problem, and then it allows us as management and labor and everybody else to get involved in trying to come up with a solution for it. So again, and this is, are you a particular railroad or just Long Island Railroad?
Sorry. We hear about it more on Long Island Railroad.
Okay.
And I haven't experienced it on Metro North. Randy, I don't know.
It has happened once or twice on Metro North. In fact, the Post about a year or so ago ran a story, and they actually had a picture of a Metro North train platformed where there was no platform.
Run out of batteries, maybe.
I'm sorry, where everything on a side opens, or is it a idiosyncratic single door in a single car?
No, what we have on the Long Island Railroad, we have a lot of times, we have a 10-car, a 12-car train and a 10-car platform, and they'll open
Right.
all 12 cars. So the last two are hanging off the edge of the platform, and if those people come out, they got no place to go except down.
I have experienced that on the LIRR, if I'm in the back car, and they're telling me, move up. Well, I can't move up because there's no way for my chair to get through the aisle,
Right.
much less through the doorway. Yeah, yeah. If my chair, no, because it's the base of the chair that it's not the chair. And that's the problem.
Yep.
Most of us know to get on in the.
So I've got this note, and I'll get some kind of response back to the leadership here.
I had what's the relationship that you have in working with the MTA police and the other police departments? 'Cause we have.
I hope it's good.
but-
I think it's good.
Is it, if we're looking now at sexual assault reporting and improvements to that system, we found some unfortunate lapses in the way it's happening. We're gonna meet and talk more fully about it. But is that something that you would get involved with? Where's the dotted line or the solid line
Yeah.
between the work that you guys do and and also fair evasion? Because I know Andrew's gonna ask that too. Or Chris.
So, on sexual assault, that's largely the police would deal with that issue. We might, on employees with sexual assault, we'll sort of look more into their health and well-being afterwards, and sort of that sort of the safety side. But I'll take the note, and I'll let Owen and also Chief Del Torre on the transit side know that that's of interest to you. I mean, I'm certain that they wouldn't mind talking to you too. I mean, I'd bring them in, yeah.
Where's this the split? And where's the sweet spots and the split spots?
Yeah, so
of what
so
you're
there's
kinda-
certainly always some gray area in every because every kind of like an assault for somebody got hurt, so there may be a safety issue involved in the right kind of idea, or we could have better lighting, we could do, but typically when it's sort of a criminal behavior, we typically let them take the lead and we'll follow, and if it's something more on a true more safety, not criminal, then we'll take the lead. But they often have a part of it, like for instance, cameras. Like we're talking about trespassing, they monitor the camera systems and take a look at all that. So we would work with them to get the feedback and information from those systems.
I'm sorry, I have one more. Apologies, because you brought up the cameras again. Okay, I was going to ask about cameras on platforms, but Mark is going to go.
Because that's been my issue for years. Because especially on Long Island Railroad, originally they were going to add in cameras to facing the cabs because there was a problem with conductors falling asleep and all that kind of stuff. But when they instituted it, it's throughout the trains. I mean, you could have 4 or 5 each part of a train. So obviously riders have concerns that they're being watched. They understand the security issues. Well, there's concerns. People say, you're looking at what I'm writing on my phone, or you're looking at well, they're entitled to have those. The issue we have is we've been asking what the guidelines are for use of those videos. And we get is a verbal kind of guidelines. So I'm asking if there are any written guidelines as to what happens, who gets access to the videos, how long are they kept, are there any, we've been asking for years now, are there any written guidelines when you're putting the cameras in? And if so, we want a copy of those guidelines.
I personally don't know them, and I can find out. I'm sure there are some. How robust they are, I don't know. And this is not going to scratch your itch, but I will tell you just anecdotally that largely, I can't, nearly almost everything that the cameras do falls into one of two categories right now. One is that it's for forensics, so like some guy got beat up on the platform or somebody fell in or whatever, and we go back and say, okay, it happened at 10 o'clock at, whatever, 14th Street, and we go back and try to find that camera footage and figure out what went on. And usually it's very helpful in that regard. Or criminally, sometimes there's an assault or there's a, something to that effect, and if they can say, yeah, it happened on this platform at this time, and then they'll find that, right? So that's one way to do it. The other area usually is if they say, hey, there's a big crowding, there's just something going on at Fulton Street or wherever, and then they'll all start to monitor those cameras, live action to try to figure out, watch and advise police and others where there's a problem going on right now. So that's largely where it is. On the trains themselves, it's the same kind of thing forensically. Largely on the trains, it's not real time. It's not real time on the trains. It's all goes into an archived tape, so to speak, and is pulled off later for if it needs to be viewed. We use it in a couple ways. One, again, forensically. Second way is that we will look at how our own crews, what they're doing. So it's sort of a safety tool to say, is that crew member? It's not an I gotcha thing really, but it can go both ways too. It can say they actually did the right thing and exonerate them right away when somebody says, oh, this person didn't do the right thing, and they can say, oh no, we watched the video. So those are largely how it's viewed. I have no instance ever where I don't even know if the cameras are that good, quite frankly, that somebody was like, said, oh, look at what this guy's reading on his iPad.
No, obviously that isn't the concern, but
Yeah.
that's the thought. People
Yeah.
may have feeling uncomfortable. They don't want to feel uncomfortable, but there
Yeah.
may be legitimate reasons, but there need to be
Yeah.
guidelines.
Yeah.
If you understand.
Yeah.
But from what you're saying, though, but I'm looking at it from the rider's perspective.
Yeah, sure.
And if an incident occurs with a rider, let's say, and a conductor, and let's say the rider wants to see that video to prove his point, from the other perspective, what are the guidelines? How long is it kept? How can you get it? There need to be written guidelines when you're going to install this many cameras. And now we're talking about installing more cameras on platforms and around Penn Station. I just want to know if there is some kind of a thought-out written guideline for how these cameras are kept and the videos are kept. And I'd like to get back somebody with an actual answer, because all I keep hearing is, oh, no, don't worry about it,
And while we're on the subject of cameras, the cameras that you mentioned on trespassing and suicide prevention, are they monitored in real time?
Not necessarily. They might be being monitored in real time. It's just a very hit or miss. If it's a particular location or the station personnel say there's an issue, they might take a look at it. Or if there's an area that we have constant problems at, we might be looking at it. But I mean, think about hundreds of stations and thousands of cameras, and you just can't look at them.
Speaking of hundreds of stations and thousands of cameras, when are you going to put it on the Staten Island Railway? There's an, as you know, there is no
answer.
fare between Tompkinsville and Tottenville, and there's a lot of things going on the majority of Staten Island Railway, which I've gotten calls about, and a number of suicides and other things going on there,
find out, I
and
don't
we
know.
need cameras. Yeah, and a PA system. Ellen?
A PA system on the platform or in the cars? On the platform.
In continuing the camera discussion a little bit and understanding where your role is, so particularly on the sexual assault, issue. In London, they have cameras on board. The one line that doesn't, the sexual assaults are much, much higher. So they're trying to get their one line that doesn't have onboard cameras to have cameras. Wondering, do you have input to the capital program? Because this is a safety, how prolific it is. It's a safety concern, and thinking when the capital program is moving forward, something like that to say this would enhance safety. Do you do something like that?
So, yes, I have input into the capital program. The thing about the capital program, though, is that almost everything that's happening on the capital program has a significant safety value to it. So it's a sort of it's a conundrum. Yeah. So and I couldn't tell you where sort of cameras would weigh in on it, but it's something, I know that cameras are being rolled out, across the system, and it just is and there's different there's also different federal and state and FEMA grant funding streams that are helping us do that. It's just sort of a matter of time to get to them all. Again, as we sort of brought up before, if you think about all the things that we want to spend money on, it is really challenging to to prioritize that.
The sense right now is it's not for onboard subways as new rail cars are coming in for the
Yeah,
subway.
so I'll get some answers on that.
I wanted a second question. It goes towards your trespassing, but it's an issue on Long Island Railroad. It's rare, but it happened recently. And as we're getting more second track, third track, we're pushing for electrification of the branches that aren't. Is the live third rail? Someone was electrocuted last week on it. Is there anything going on in today's safety world that we should be looking at to protect people from that live third rail, in addition just to general trespassing issues with that, protecting from that?
That's a very interesting question. So electrified rail is in the United States, it's predominantly all in the Northeast. There are some other places, but it's really concentrated up here, and it has great value in the sense that it's green, and it's there's a lot of reasons for it. There's always a question about whether you use third rail or you use catenary, which is the wires that are up in the sky, right? And some are easier to maintain, cheaper to maintain, but they all have their pros and cons. I don't know of any big program that's out there with regard to explicitly trying to, keep someone from accidentally touching the third rail, in the sense of that power traction world out there. But in terms of just trespassing, that it sort of falls into how do we try to keep them from doing that, and then the question becomes, and how restrictive are we in terms of, we just heard the challenge of that the door didn't open up in the right spot so they can get some disabled passengers on board, et cetera, et cetera. So in terms of fencing and all these other challenges out there, it's really a balance to try to thread the needle on all that. It really is a challenge. I wish I had a better answer than that, and it is one of the most dangerous, to use the word, areas of rail. Not that everything about a train is very, very dangerous, but it is a significant area.
Stations at the ends of platforms warning you about the electrified third rail. But if you were to join the rails at a place that wasn't at a station, between stations, like at a crossing or something, there should be signs there as well, I would think. Maybe along the top of the third rail itself.
Are you like at a grade crossing or something like that?
Yeah, or just between stations even.
Move them further back, there's a bigger gap.
I didn't know if there was something that could be built around them to keep it protected. I didn't know the.
Chris was next. Then Trudy. Then Oren.
Regarding the safety concern also, as Edith mentioned, and I know Mark has been mentioning it too, we've been seeing also a lot of issues with homelessness, people that could be going on the tracks as well, because lately we've been seeing unruly passengers. We're getting a lot of those alerts, like even just now I'm getting one on now in another borough. But these safety concerns, as Lisa brought up also, it's causing a lot of confusion, delays, and it really disturbs the community because it hurts, people want to get home, like in this hot weather or a really bad thunderstorm. And it's really disturbing. Also, with guarding the humps, also, as Edith mentioned, 175th Street, we do have some stations, like I'll use an example, Atlantic Avenue on the 2 and 3 platform, which is supposed to be refixed in the next couple of weeks, with the hump sinking in because sometimes the station can wear out. But there are some cars that do have issues like that. But I hope in the future you can look at some stations that they just finally built a hump, but it's not in the right place. Like Kings Highway on the Coney Island side, it's it's a little more out, but you have to go almost to the edge area. I have mentioned this to Alex already. And it's still a little, some areas are not safe, but their safety signs are there telling them to not stand there. If something we can work on in the near future, we can work on more proper safeties for accessibility, seniors, for all transit systems from Metro North Long Island Railroad and subway and buses.
Want me to
Yeah,
answer-
can we,
talk
no,
about
it's okay,
the,
I have mine.
homeless thing?
Could we get back to cameras for a minute? And I want to talk about cameras on city buses, not internal, but external. Because with more and more designated bus lanes and more, especially on the SBS buses, and some of these lanes, people actually have to go into the street. But with the bus lanes, there is seems to be no control over people still, even though no parking signs are up, people parking in there, and especially delivery trucks, what have you. And that means that the passengers, the customers who want to board these buses have to go into a traffic lane in order to board them. That is definitely safety. And when I have talked to so many bus drivers who say, don't blame me, I can't get into my lane, when I see people and myself boarding these buses, and I say, well, what about the cameras that are now installed? At least you can report them, they can get a ticket. And a lot of them say, what camera are you talking about? Those that have it say, I don't have time driving the bus, taking care of everything else, to start snapping pictures. So the question is, first of all, training the bus drivers that, or maybe there is some kind of an automatic thing that if there's something, they just push a little button and it takes a picture, and reporting it to the local precinct or DOT or whoever. What, if anything, is being done about that?
So Judy, those cameras are just, they're automatic cameras. They're just not on all the buses yet. The drivers may not know, but
Only they don't know, I'm sorry, thank you. They don't know about the cameras, or if they do, they don't know how they operate, or if they are automatic to do whatever they have to do. They just, and I've seen one or two instances. Yeah, okay, so can we?
So so you've heard that actually the bus driver has really nothing to do with the cameras. That being said, it's an interesting idea that maybe at least some of the tapes are pulled every now and again from the buses, and maybe a review and to look at who may be violating the lane, and some kind of enforcement activity can pursue after that. I don't know, but I certainly can bring that up. Yeah.
When you say sometimes, isn't it an automatic thing that they are supposed to then report these violations, or these trucks or cars that are parking in bus lanes? You're saying that the cameras are there are tapes, but nobody does anything with them?
I'm saying that the tapes are used for a couple of different reasons. Sometimes they're used for forensics. For instance, if there's an accident, they'll go back and look what's going on. Sometimes they're used to see if the bus operator is operating his bus correctly. But I don't know that we actually go take a look at them to look for traffic infractions by other vehicles. So I'll have to get back to your question on that.
I believe that the path system, all the platforms are raised up to match the height of the train. So I will, on my next trip on path, well, but the whole platform is raised, so
Yeah.
it doesn't matter where, if
hump,
they're
yeah.
off a bit. I believe it's technically not allowed to take pictures on path,
Yeah.
but I will do my best to see what I can do.
Oops, sorry. Yeah, I was just wondering, has the MTA ever done a comprehensive fatalities analysis? Since the MTA is involved in maybe 90 to 100 fatal incidents a year, maybe you can track some recurring themes, with that many deaths. Has that ever been done, or is it just on an individual by individual basis?
We do track, every death that happens out there. Deaths that are caused by, a train operating improperly or a bus operating improperly are one sort of category of them, right? Which are very, very small. I mean, very small. Might be one, maybe two in a year, if that at all. But the case of trespassers, for some reason or another, they've stumbled down drunk, fall into the whatever. There are many, as you just pointed out. What I don't particularly know if somebody's done a how deep of analysis has been done in the past, and I'd have to look at to see what it is. But to your point, I think it's worth looking at if there's places that it happens more frequently than others, more often than others. And they may be favorite spots either for, we know that the nightlife is just a little bit too robust there and we probably should be a little bit more watchful, or they're just a favorite spot for somebody who's ill. So, or homeless or whatever. Yep. So we'll take a look at that. I think it's an interesting idea.
Yeah, there may be a recurring theme, if, again, you have so many, and then over the course of a couple of years, you get 90, 100 a year, you're liable to find, like you said, maybe certain locations, or even like with buses, maybe the way they come in, there may be something there, and that could, even if you save 2 or 3 lives by doing that kind of analysis, be worth it.
Pat, let me ask you a couple of questions, then I'll call on you, Carol. Since the advent of the group station managers on the subway system, has all station personnel been given training on what to do if somebody reports a person on the tracks?
I can say pretty confidently yes. If they get alerted to it, if they know what to do, if they know about it. So I can say that. Now, and it probably gets to them pretty quickly, because that's sort of high adventure for anybody standing there looking, and they're going to start,
Well, but if a passenger sees someone on the tracks, uses a help point or whatever, because it's quicker than going all the way up to the booth.
Right, exactly. What they should do.
Yes.
Yeah. And the system is, and the dispatchers are know enough to, as soon as it gets into the system, they will shut the system down. So that part is very rapid. It doesn't matter which system it's on. And by the way, if you're ever out on a grade crossing, where you see a railroad anywhere in the country, by every single railroad crossing out there, there's a little blue sign that tells you what the crossing number is and the phone number and a phone number to call. So if for any reason your car, your truck, your whatever is stuck on the tracks, call that number. Don't try to get your car off. Call that number. They'll stop the trains no matter where they are. And then, yes, get out of the car first, and call that number, and they will.
Assuming you have cell service.
Then it'll solve the problem, and it'll be happening. They'd rather have a 30-minute delay on the train than they would to have a 24-hour delay, because they're sweeping up your mess.
And the last thing I wanted to ask you was, you were talking earlier about PTC installation on Long Island Railroad and Metro North. Have all of the fleets of both of those railroads been made PTC ready as of this point?
Yes, in the sense that every piece of equipment, unless it just arrived yesterday or something, but usually anything new is already pre-mounted. It's all the equipment is on those systems, and along the wayside. So there's along the tracks, right? So if there's so what's happening right now is that they have to go through and first ensure that track segment, so between X place and Y place on the track, is communicating properly with the trains, et cetera, there. And then, of course, make sure that the train, when it operates down that piece of track, in fact, it's communicating properly. So that's where we are now in the process.
And will all sections of Long Island Railroad and Metro North be made PTC, including the Greenport branch of Long Island and Waterbury branch of Metro North?
Yeah, the requirement is all passenger rail in the nation has
regardless
to
of frequencies?
Well, no, that's not true. If they drop below a certain number of trips, and I'd have to get it to you because I don't want to tell you something wrong. I don't know if it's 10 a day. I can't remember what the number is.
No, it's under 10 a day on the two places I just
So
mentioned.
it may not be required there. And but I can get you that answer.
All right,
It
thanks.
is in regulation.
Thank you. Carol was next, I believe.
Thank
then
you for
Oren.
coming.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering about, you talked about emergency management. Do you get involved with all the training that, for frontline personnel in emergency management? I was just curious because a number of years ago, before the Fulton Street station opened to the new Fulton Street station, they did fire safety training, and I participated. And I was, it was pretty, it was very disappointing to see the level of, it was geared towards people with disabilities, and the training, the frontline employees pretty much fell down on the job. And so I was wondering, is there a plan in place for working with people with disabilities as far as fire safety and just in general?
Let's get you an answer, because Pat's
I know,
time is
I
very
understand
limited.
that, and thank you.
Yeah, Pat?
I'll real quick is, so first of all, training like that, and I understand your frustration in it, but the point, one of the good things that come out of it is that issues are found out, and then we go back and try to fix those and get those added into training. I personally don't go down to every piece of work of training out there, but I'll bring the note back, and I know that Alex Elagunen is, I think, aware of that particular training, and it's been reinforced at that particular location to be better. Yeah, right. I know. I totally understand what you're saying. So, and I think, and not only that location, but all locations are being talked about. Yeah.
Okay, Oren, you'll be the last, because Pat's got to go.
Yeah.
Okay, now it is. One of the big problems with suburban railroad crossings is cars backing up onto crossings. Does the MTA have a comprehensive plan on what to do to eliminate this problem?
Several techniques to go after that problem. One of them is to try to get they call it preemption, is try to get the traffic lights to be in synchronized, so that if the gates come down, they either turn green or red depending on which way the traffic's flowing, so that they can clear that intersection, that grade crossing. So it's not everywhere right now, but there are efforts out there to put it in locations where it would do the most good. That's the most common way to try to solve that problem.
Also, there's a system called force-off, which can be worked with local authorities to modify the signals so that it automatically does it, regardless of whether a train is coming.
He's an expert in that.
Pat, thank you very much. Very informative session. Thanks so much. Thanks, Pat. Lisa, you were in the middle of your report, I believe. Okay, let's do old business. Who has an item of old business they would like to bring up? Looking at members first, but not seeing any members raising their hands. Matt, what did you have?
Back in court on the 1st of August. On the 1st of August.
That's all you had to say, Matt?
All I had to say.
Thank you. Edith.
Yeah, I'm gonna send, Lisa, I'm gonna send you an email. Okay, the question what I wanted to bring up with him for a second was, a number of years ago, there was training at the Transit Museum for people with the STEP program.
Yep.
Also, after the opening of Fulton, the ADA, whatever the hell our committee is called, thank you, did a tour of Fulton, which was very helpful. And I really would love to see the MTA work at doing outreach to the communities. When they open a new station, something like Fulton is a total nightmare. But your little, Huntington, when you switch trains from one side to the other, and it's not adequate signage, there's no information. Passengers need to have information. It's not just staff. And I really think that one of the things that the MTA needs to do is focus on wayfinding, whatever, so to improve the experience of passengers.
The only place that I recall they did what you're suggesting is when they opened 34th Street Hudson Yards. They sort of had a whole community outreach there and did a wayfinding, and they did a walking tour. They did all of that.
Right, and it's true.
Haven't seen it since.
And the ambassadors with the limited buses. This all falls into better operating with the community. I mean, how many times are we on a limited bus and the driver has to explain to each and every tourist coming on that, no, you got to go back there and, do it there. SBS, I'm sorry. Right. Well,
Dating
we
yourself.
don't have them in my neighborhood, so we think of them as the same. But, there's a need for outreach. There's a need for knowing
Agreed.
where the hell the elevator is on the Long Island Railroad.
Yeah, whenever they renovate a station, build a new station, reconfigure a station, they ought to be doing things like that. No doubt about it.
Andrew, could I just follow up? Because I was really shocked to hear that all the new buses with cameras on them pointing out into the street, and then nothing happens with them, that they're not regularly monitored. It's one
They
thing
are.
about
They are,
no,
Judy.
he just said no.
He didn't know.
It's two different things. So the red light cameras take pictures automatically, and they're sent, and violations are sent.
Right.
That's very different.
They are.
There
They are,
is-
but what
that's
they
not what his
what we
focus
don't have
is.
yet is after so many violations, you lose your registration.
Right, they-
That we
that's-
don't have yet, but
Right.
you get fined.
There are not every bus has a red light camera yet. There's not. There's still a limited number of them. But the program is designed to work. I'm not going to say everybody does, because I don't know that. I haven't checked that out. We'll look into it. But the program is designed so that any violator automatically gets issued a summons.
If we could check it out, I would really appreciate it, because there have been so many instances. And I've seen people at least 2 or 3 times, and that's just when I'm on a bus, literally almost get hit by a car because they're moving out into
bus,
another
yeah.
traffic lane. So if we could check out what's done with these
We
violations,
can find out
I'd
how many
appreciate
lines
it.
have it.
No, but
Lines and vehicles. Yeah, we will. Oren.
thank you.
Okay, New Jersey has a law about buses pulling out of bus stops, and that is a bus pulling out of a bus stop into a lane of traffic has the right of way, and vehicles have to yield to it. Once the bus gets into the normal traffic lane, it no longer has that priority. It's a good law, and I think we should look into it, how well it works, because if you see all the buses from New Jersey, on the back of the bus, they even have a yield sign warning motorists that that bus has priority pulling out of bus stops. And this could be something that could just help buses move a little faster in New York.
Oren, if it's a New Jersey bus and it's coming to New York City, does it know that it doesn't have that right in New York City?
Yeah, because the buses primarily go to the Port Authority bus terminal.
Yeah.
But it's a good law, and I think we should look into it.
No, what I am talking about, though, okay, but he didn't understand what I was talking about. Okay.
To ask Oren's question, because I understand what he's. No. May I finish, please? Because I don't want to waste time. I'm sorry, but I just don't want to do that. I think we should maybe look at it in one way, because it might save a life for, a person on a back sign, because lately you have cars like to cut off in front of a bus. And remember, we do have a rule in MTA, safety matters to us. Maybe we
Chris,
need to look at
we
it.
absolutely understood Oren's request.
Well, can I second that motion? Till we put it as a
Not
survey?
necessary. We're going to act.
But can I add a survey to it? Can we do a survey?
You're going to do a survey?
I can do it. I don't care. I'll do it because this is what maybe saves a customer's
Transit has
life.
the answers to that question. We will get the answers.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Trust me.
saying. If we could do a survey. I said
We don't
if.
have to do a survey. We'll get you the answer you're looking for. I don't feel like standing out in bus exhaust doing that survey, if you don't mind. Okay. Any old business before we move to new business? Seeing none, let's go to new business. Yes, Matt?
I should have asked Pat this, but I wish that the conductor, ticket takers on the Metro North line, when there is a bridge plate at the Westport station the other day, I had to run to get off of the actual train. Oh, if there's a bridge plate there, you have to move up one car. That's right, Edith.
You know what a bridge plate is, right? Yeah. Sure.
They're telling you you've got to go to the next car to exit the car?
Because the door didn't, one of the doors didn't open over a bridge plate, obviously.
They've done it in advance.
Yeah.
Any experience I've had with these bridge plates, they've always announced ahead of time that you need to be in the car. They don't do it when you're already there.
Yeah, yeah. Anyone else with any order of new business? Chris?
Yeah, in new business, one thing I wanted to thank Randy on something also. Something he mentioned at the last 3 months meeting ago was something regarding with Metro, with the trains, with those signs that have been updated more onto the Metro North. I might have forgotten, but I just popped in my head.
Talking about the Grand Central Terminal signs?
No,
Which signs?
at 125. They were updated. I mentioned it 3 months ago. It was added.
I did see it yesterday. I was
Yeah.
going down up to Harrison, so I bounced back from Tarrytown. And I noticed that the signs which are on the overhead are a different system than the out front signs, which are those beautiful new ones, because there was a 9:14 train that was late, and it was showing it coming 3 minutes late, but on the out front sign, it had already gone. So I took pictures and I sent it to the appropriate people at Metro North. Got right away a response that yes, they know that they're not synced, but eventually they will be. But they are well aware of it.
But thank you.
Are we going back to Lisa's report? Did she finish?
We can. Did you have a specific question, Jerry?
Yeah.
Okay.
You mentioned you sent a letter out last week about an MTA policy on contractors.
Right. So the May 22nd board meeting went into a 2-hour executive session. During that executive session, actions were taken regarding the overtime situation and the desire to and the decision to hire somebody to look into that. This has nothing to do with that.
Okay.
2 days later, we saw an article in Politico, which is basically a subscriber-based blog or email report. In that article, we saw, and we'd heard rumblings about that from various people, that an emergency debarment rule had been signed, and the board members had been notified of it during the emergency session. During the executive session, and that the debarment rule would take place, would be retroactive to April 12th. And it was based on language that was included in the budget legislation that would require contractors who were 10% over budget or overtime to be debarred from doing business with the MTA for 5 years. So we were really surprised that this had been signed and that there had been no notice of it. So we waited until on Wednesdays the state register comes out, which notices publicly what new emergency rules are, what rules are, when hearings are going to be held, and things like that. And there was no notification of this emergency rule. So we looked into what the requirements are for the different kinds of emergency rules. There's one that requires public notification and public process, and there's one that does not. And the letter that we sent included a number of questions about why the public was not informed. The fact that we had 2 board members in the room who were under the impression that there would be a public discussion of it, and were surprised that there was not. That there should have been notice in the state register, and that there was not. And asked that the rules then be either allowed to lapse or be superseded with new rules that incorporated a public process. That public process, because they're 90-day emergency rules, they after 90 days they have to, if they're going to be reissued, they need to go back and be refiled, and the refile comes in as a public process.
Okay, I guess my question is, how does the implementation of this rule, how does it adversely affect commuters?
Well, the problem that we had with it was the lack of any public process. No public
No,
process.
no.
No
That's
public
not the
input.
question.
Okay.
The question is, if that rule is implemented,
Mm-hmm.
what adverse effect does it have on the MTA or the commuters?
Sure.
What is
Well-
the negative? What's the downside?
Well, so the upsides are it holds people's feet to the fire. The downside is that it could immediately stop work on things like East Side Access. It could immediately stop work on positive train control. It could immediately stop work on any project where a contractor is 10% over budget.
And it could immediately shorten the amount of contractors who are willing to do business with the MTA,
And
thus
increase
driving up
the
price.
cost too. Right. Right. Oh, the reasoning behind it is it was in the budget. No, so it was included in the budget legislation. It was in terms of I did some outreach just anecdotally to people who are in various industries that would be affected by this, to find out if they'd been notified that these emergency department rules had even been implemented. Fully a week after they were signed, let alone retroactive to, nobody had been formally notified of them. Nobody that we know has seen a signed copy of them. We're not able to find any evidence that they're Bigfoot right now, except that that it's been that board members have been told that they exist. So those are some of the things that we're working on that are of the more heady activities. Where we've also, going back to some of the highlights of the work that we're doing, many pages back here. As was mentioned before, we're continuing to work up on, continuing to follow up on member appointments. And we have a number of outstanding not just council members, but our board member appointments. It will be interesting to see if the new board appointments that Mayor de Blasio has put forward make it before the end of the legislative session. It's less than 2 weeks. There are rumors that the governor is going to replace 2 current board members and fill them with one name that's been floated is Robert Mojica, who's the state budget director. I don't quite understand how he's got time. I think he's busy. And the other person is somebody from the fiscal office, from the state office of fiscal affairs. So we're some of it we're keeping our ear to the ground on the rumor mill, but we're also talking to other advocates to see what their issues and concerns are, because we have our issues and concerns that continue to be about the process and the public engagement and public information aspects of it. Oh, and just circling back to the letter that we sent on the emergency department rule, we also reached out. We shared the letter. The letter was shared with the board and not at our behest, which I thought was terrific, and I'm hoping it's because the MTA leadership thinks that there's merit to it and are going to consider it, or because they didn't want to read about it or hear about it from somewhere else. We also sent it out to some of the better business organizations, not just the trade, not just Building Congress and general contractors and some of the other organizations, but also Partnership for Better New York and ABNY and those groups, to make sure that they were aware of the, business activities and issues at the MTA level. We are, monitoring the overtime situation without getting certainly engaged or involved in that. That's something that we, that's a very hot button issue. Certainly, we were asked to comment on that a number of times, and we declined to do that, thanking them very much. Carol's been participating in a number of meetings, and the issue of wayfinding came up today, so Carol's been very much engaged in sort of being, testing out some new wayfinding, and I know Christopher has done that as well. So monitoring those issues, and as I said, I really do have 9 pages of things that we've been doing. So, but I'm happy to, talk about any of the other specifics if you have any questions. One of the issues that we had over the last month was that our website crashed. And we were able to, through really, really aggressive efforts on behalf of Sheila and Bradley and with assist from Ellen and everybody who were here, pull it back together. But it's being held basically together with popsicle sticks and glue. So we're going to be looking into, or well, we like gum. We can't walk and chew gum, but but that's something that we're going to be looking into is updating our website as well.
You mentioned wayfinding. One of the issues one of our members brought up, and I never even realized it, at Penn Station. If you're on 7th Avenue, you have no idea that that's the entrance to the Long Island Railroad.
Right.
If you're on 34th Street, you see the big sign and the awning,
Right.
but if you're on 7th Avenue, and that seems kind of ridiculous. There's a sign there for Amtrak, there's a sign there for New Jersey
Yeah.
Transit, for the Long Island Railroad. I mean,
Right.
I just knew it because I've been doing it for, 30
Right.
years, but
I know after I heard that issue, I looked as well, and I thought, oh, look at that. There's not really a sign there. What I found really disturbing, particularly about not just the conversation and that issue, was the next level of issue of, that there's not really any coordination between, or not as much coordination as perhaps we'd like to see, between New York City Transit and the Long Island Railroad on the work that's happening, where transit's work ends and where the railroad work begins. Yeah, that was brought up at the meeting.
They both acknowledge it.
Yeah, and they both said, well, it's their fault. Which is not okay. So that, is that an issue that gets resolved by having Capital Construction do everything? Capital Construction cannot do everything. And that's something that was also brought up at the last board meeting by Larry Schwartz about Grand Central and the work that's happening there. Apparently
Yeah,
Had an issue there.
Grand Central right now, every day they move something. And the last couple of days, there have been up escalators between getting to the 4, 5, and 6, but no down escalators, and you have to go walk down. I don't know if any of our people concerned with disabilities. And then but it literally changes then where the staircase is, which staircase. There should be, if we can find out, at least getting accurate signage or something saying how long this condition is going to last or whatever. But it's really disastrous, especially, I don't know if you guys, in terms of disability access, but people right now have to walk downstairs. They cannot take an escalator to get to the platform.
There's been a little congestion.
An elevator. Local law 28 requires signage at the main entry when the main entry is not accessible. Find me a sign at the LIRR or at Metro North that tells you where there's an elevator.
There is no sign that says
Exactly.
elevator, and there isn't really a sign until you get to where the escalators were, where there was up and down, that tells you, don't go on here because this is only going in one direction, and you got to go over to the staircase all the way on the other side that they have just built.
No,
So
that's an issue that anybody who goes through those stations is not just aware of, but as I was saying, the governor's secretary went through Grand Central and has made the
Well-
governor aware of it. And now
Well-
I believe that is being worked on, but we will follow up on it because
just signage,
every
if
time
nothing else.
I'm there every day and I forget or I don't know or it's a different direction. So yeah, and it's at Penn
Thank you.
Station as well.
What?
4, 5, 6, 7, use this.
All you have to go search for it. Believe me, I know. Right, and there is nothing indicating.
All right,
there-
folks.
We know what we're.
Enough with the cross. Let's.
Would love to have a discussion at some point about the Amtrak work, which begins diverting Amtrak from Penn Station the third week in June. So we're very lucky.
It diverts certain trains from Penn Station, not all of Amtrak.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yes, of course, the Empire.
Through September 6th or something like that. Yes.
Last year about it, and red
No, it's
caps and all sorts of things. And if we could jump the bullet, there's not much we're jumping at this point. But it might be helpful if
Trains, I think.
the PCAC office at least was able to find some information out about it, so that when the questions are asked.
So there have been, I thought they started pretty early this year with putting information out. About putting information out. For the last month or 2 months, they've been talking about the trains and the times, and I don't believe there's the same level of diversion that there has been in the past. It's essentially combining some trains, eliminating others, adding different ones, doing the platform shuffle. Part of the issue will be about ensuring that there's adequate communication for. Okay, thank you. Ensuring that there's adequate communication, but please.
Just Edith, Edith, just, when we have been getting briefings, we've been involved. So if you have any questions, you could ask. It's not that they haven't done it. We've done it. We've had them to our meetings. We've gone through all this. So any questions you could ask PCA staff because we've had them. So you're entitled to any of this information. Just PCS, we've done it as our council. So, but
Right.
The problem is with people
It
who
affects LIRR, obviously.
who travel episodically. I go up for board meetings. I go up-
Episodically.
Well,
I like that word.
it's an episodic.
Yeah,
It's
very
not
good.
every day.
I am. Okay, guys, one person, don't have to
Your
jump
name
on the
is
door.
Mike now, just so you know.
Yes,
Yeah.
my name is Dr. Mike now. To answer that question, because I use Amtrak when I have to go upstate for Albany, what they did was they took away the Chicago train, any of the longer, really long ones, and wherever's the shuttle ones from Albany to here, those are running. For me, if I'm supposed to take the 415, now I can't take the 415. I have to wait for the 615, which in one way it's good for me because at least I have a decency after the meeting's finished. I can eat dinner and then worry about whatever I get home.
Thanks for that detail, Chris.
No, I'm being serious because there is concern because these trains that run from Albany to thank you. I was waiting for Ida to say. Or Schenectady. Well, Schenectady is still going to be having a train, but they are not going. Instead of you waiting an hour, you might have to wait 2 to 3 hours for a train. Randy, it's important because it does affect accessibility
But the
and it does
PCAC
affect.
office has this information.
Yes.
Last summer, when we were trying to track down the red cap information, the PCAC office had no information. Okay, fine.
Yes,
That's
you
all-
are, and I
We're
just
like
saying,
Con Edison. We're on it.
this year got better than last year, but last year it's called
It's
an
also
error.
less disruptive this year.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that's why I'm saying I agree.
Yes. Yes.
But that's not to say that we don't have concerns.
Yeah,
and we've
no, I'm not
expressed
saying-
them.
I'm not saying that.
I'm not saying it's going to be perfect.
No,
and
but
we're not.
Mark, you said the
So,
right what I'm saying.
just,
You're in
you
the
know.
back up what I'm saying. Thank you.
Any other issues before we adjourn? Thank you.
Move
Have
to
a wonderful
adjourn.
summer, folks. We'll see you at the committee meetings.
September